Welcome to our first webinar of 2025, where we will be offering advice on entering the 2025 SuperValu TidyTowns Competition. My name is Liv Gorman. I'm manager of the Tidy Towns unit of the Department of Rural and Community Development. I'm here with my colleague, many of you may know, Helen Murray, as well as Siobhan Lindsay. And with us today, we have Cormac McCarthy, an experienced adjudicator and former chair of Ennis Tidy Towns, who is going to talk you through successfully entering the 2025 SuperValu Tidy Towns competition. Over to you, Cormac.
Thanks a million, Neve. Okay, folks, we're going to have a quick presentation on some ideas about how to complete the application form. So just bear with me. Okay, so today's session is going to be just some advice about how to prepare your Tidy Town submission. So first of all, look, a huge congratulations to everyone on behalf of all the adjudicators and the team in the department. We just want to say well done on all the work that you've been doing since the last submission, and we're very appreciative of the work that you're doing and also the stress that maybe some of you are under. So again, these are just going to be some ideas, some suggestions. There's no such thing as the perfect submission. And as an adjudicator, I know each year we see some really, really fantastic ideas. So we've tried to group as many of them together to give you a flavor of what makes a very, very easy to read and engaging submission. So I suppose the first and most important thing for all of you to know is where you can get the relevant information. So you can go onto the Tidy Towns website, and that not only has the entry forms, but it also has the information booklet. So that's a really, really good starting point for everyone. Also, a shout out for the special awards. Please don't forget to enter the special awards. They're not adjudicated by us adjudicators, it's by the individual sponsors. So, but again, a really good opportunity maybe for some projects that you've done this year and have included in your entry, into your entry, but to potentially get another prize for that. And in terms of deadlines, so the main competition, the deadline is Monday, the 12th of May. So it's coming up very, very quickly. But the special awards, you have an extra couple of weeks, and that's Monday, the 9th of June. So we're going to talk about now is the entry form, and we're also going to make reference to the UN SDGs, which I know in fairness, you've been leading on this in the community sector about showing alignment of your activities to the SDGs. So the first suggestion would be, and again, everything is going to be different depending on your individual committee. So again, these aren't hard and fast rules. They're just suggestions for you to take on board. Divide and conquer. The submission is a huge workload, and take it from someone who did it for a number of years for Ennis Tidy Towns. It really, really is a colossal amount of work. But it really is, it's your shop window, and it's your ability to show us, the adjudicator, the fantastic work that's been going on for the last 12 months, some of which we might not be able to see when we're there doing our site visits. So consider assigning different categories to different people. That means that you're sharing the workload. And then equally, don't forget the handbook. There's some really, really good advice in the handbook on how to complete your application form. Be concise and specific. And I suppose this really is the key thing. And I know, again, from experience, it's feedback we would have got over a number of years from our adjudicators. You have to clearly explain what you did, but include why you did it as well and the results. What we really, really like to see in the Tidy Towns competition is the impact that community groups are having. So just don't say that you did a project. If you can, at all possible, show the impact that it had on your local community. Sometimes that can be wrapped up in 3 to 4 lines. There is no reason why you would have a very, very lengthy 1 or 2 pages on any given project. That kind of detail you save for the special awards. For us, we just want the most relevant information in as clear, as concise as you can. And I suppose just to explain this, I'm personally from County Clare, and I know there's about over 50 entries in Clare alone. And for an adjudicator to get that many entries, you don't want to be going in with submissions that are 70, 80, 90, and some are over 100 pages long. So really, you want to make it as easy as possible for the adjudicator to adjudicate your town or village. Visual evidence. As they say, a picture tells 1,000 words, and really for some of the projects that maybe we might not be able to see on the ground, particularly if it was a community event, if you held an event, say, during UN SDG week, or if it was to do with a Christmas event, Before and after photos are absolutely fantastic to help illustrate the impact that you had. So definitely always try and include your before and after picture. Digital integration. I suppose what I mean by that is most of the Tidy Towns groups now have an online presence, be it a website or absolutely so many of you now have social media, which is wonderful to see. Please provide links to any videos you've done. Now, these could be videos that are linked in the likes of Facebook or Instagram, and that's absolutely fine. But just be very strategic in how you do it. If you have a 30 or 40 page submission and you're including 60 hyperlinks to videos and posts, that's a huge amount of additional work on the adjudicator. So please only put in the high impact links that you feel will add some added benefit to your submission. Make sure that you have a balance across all your categories. So we're trying to give you points wherever we can across all your categories, but don't focus on just one or two, because if you have 3 or 4 categories where nothing has happened over the last year, it's very, very hard to award you points. So please, in as much as you can, try and ensure an even distribution. Bearing in mind, we know a lot of groups are doing fantastic work in the area of biodiversity, sustainability, and community engagement. So there will always be a category that is more heavily weighted than another, but try and hit all 8 categories. Make sure that you highlight the maintenance. It's not all about the new projects. What adjudicators love to see is projects that maybe were done in the last year or two and that you're investing time and effort in maintaining. So absolutely include where projects are being maintained. If there's work in progress, again, that's absolutely fine as well. Say, for example, if there is a town or renewal village scheme and there's a lot of construction at the time, a really good idea here is to include a photo montage of what the works will look like when completed. And a lot of the time, your local authority will have that to hand. So make sure to include that. Don't ever worry that you think that we will deduct marks for enhancement works that are mid-construction. That will never happen. And the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, we've been asking this for the last number of years, so this needs to be done per project, not per category. So what's very, very useful in the application form is it shows what SDGs are most linked to that particular category. But what the adjudicator would really love to see is if you have a particular project, which of those 17 SDGs does that project align to? So really, really try and start to do that. We know it's an additional layer of work for your submission, but it is something that both the department and the adjudicators are really committed to. So please try and do your best there. So as Neve said at the beginning, I'm the former chair of Ennis Tidy Towns, and we won in 2021. So it was absolutely fantastic, and we were over the moon. But what we also committed to doing was we released our submission that year because we had got 2 years of very positive feedback from the adjudicator. And we just felt that, and I know when I was doing up the submission, I was always intrigued to know what makes a good submission. So whilst I'm sharing this one today and it is freely available on the internet, there's no such thing as the perfect submission. I'm sure there are elements within this that we could have improved on, but it will give you an idea and it'll give you a flavour of some of the feedback we got. So as you can see, we really emphasized photographs. So it's really leaning into the visual side of your submission. Because like we said, a picture tells 1,000 words. What you'll also see there is that we color coded it. So M was a maintain project. Then you have the SDGs beside that. And we decided to come across this, I suppose it was at a time something we just did in Ennis. We call things a flagship project. So that's not a criteria within the handbook, but we felt there were certain projects that we put an awful lot of time and effort into. So we flagged that for the adjudicator. So there you'll see again in green, we have signed it as new. And again, the SDGs. Big, big emphasis on the photographs. What we also did was, and this is something just, that every adjudicator does do, we go back to your previous adjudication report and we see what the recommendations were. So to make that easier, what we've done is in Ennis, and again, it's something that I think other adjudicators might like, is that you give an update on the previous year per category. So there were some issues there that we had under tidiness and litter control in Ennis that year. So actions on the 2019 adjudication report and just things like an old gate at Bank Place needs a makeover. And then we give a very short update going, this has been added to our work schedule, or an abandoned mountain bike opposite Falls never made it home. And then we just put in a funny little statement saying the owner must have since come back, as when we visited, the bike was gone. So again, very, very short descriptions here, because some of these issues might be quite large and might have required a lot of work on your behalf. So you can reference them further down in that category. The other thing to bear in mind is you really, really have to watch the length of your submission. So what you see here on the left is, you might go, well, you've just added in this big photograph and text that wasn't there beforehand. But what we did was we deleted all the descriptive text from the application form. And so many years we see an awful lot of groups who leave this in place. That is just meant to be guidance for yourselves. The adjudicators know what they're looking for, so there's no need whatsoever to keep that in. So if you look there under tidiness and litter control on the application form, about half the page is full of that descriptive text. If you multiply that by 8, all of a sudden you've significantly reduced your overall size of your submission. So again, just something to bear in mind. When you're doing your individual project descriptions, again, this is the approach we adopted in Ennis, and other groups will be doing it in different ways, and that's absolutely fine. So we would number the project. We'd have the project title, which in this case was a gum litter project. Whether it was new or maintained. This year it was new. Again, this was one of our flagship projects, and it went in for a gum litter award, and we managed to keep it to about 5 lines of text, and the rest were photographs. So it's just always bear that in mind. Sometimes it's actually much, much harder to keep your text succinct and to the point than it is to put in reams and reams of information. So again, always bear in mind, you're trying to make the adjudicator's job as easy as possible and help award points as easily as they can. And again, what we did was there was more emphasis here on putting in photographs that we had done with the local school, at a local disco, and it gave a really good flavour for the adjudicator. So that's just really quickly how you can apply that system throughout the entire submission. So again, delete unnecessary text, keep your project succinct, and make sure it's really, really visual and numbered. Now we get on to the map. And I suppose this is the one thing us adjudicators talk about most often every year. It really is the one thing you must get right. The map is hugely, hugely important. The format matters. Again, ideally, we would be saying, if possible, use A4. Some groups look for A3 size mapping, but again, it really does depend. If you have a small village, there's no reason why you can't fit your map on an A4. Sometimes for the larger towns, they opt for A3. Maybe a double-sided A4 might be better. Because the one thing to bear in mind is, we're there, we're not wanting to be seen, but if we decide to take out an A3 map in the middle of a small town or a village, we're going to be spotted really, really quickly. So again, we're hoping you're going to try and help us keep under the radar. Clarity is absolutely key. So hand-drawn maps are absolutely acceptable, and we've seen some wonderful hand-drawn maps, some that are absolutely works of art, as long as they're clear and accurate. One thing I recommend to some groups that I give talks to is the public grant aid. Would you consider using that grant aid to get a reusable digital map? So each year you would change the project and you would be able to overlay that in Microsoft Word or whatever software you use for your application. But that is a really, really great investment, because you will have that year on year on year, and it wouldn't need to be drawn each time. So it's just something to consider. Really do avoid Google Maps, because Google Maps is very cluttered, particularly when you zoom in, and when you zoom out, you lose an awful lot of detail. By all means, use an ordnance survey map where possible if you can access it. But again, not to overstress, hand-drawn maps are absolutely perfect, so don't be worried about that. And make sure to include the vital information. Street and road names, absolutely key, as well as key buildings. So if there's a courthouse or if there's a church, make sure to put them in, because it's really, really good for us adjudicators so we can orientate ourselves in your towns and villages. I include facilities there. That's a kind of a code word. If there are public toilets, we would really appreciate it if you could put them in. Bear in mind, there's some long days out there adjudicating, so if you can indicate that on a map, that would be very much appreciated. Again, sequential numbering, start with number one in your streetscape and public places category and move on from there and continue that sequence throughout all the remaining categories. Um, Again, mark them. This is more to do with the legend. If you can mark those projects as new or maintained, that's really good for us. Also, again, the legend, if you can assign them per category, sometimes this is more doable. If you have an awful lot of projects, this might be quite hard, but the key thing is just make it as easy as possible for us to find your projects because we really are eager to award points, but there it can get very frustrating if you can't find your way around a town or village. But you have to bear in mind, we might be visiting your town or village for the first time. We have incredibly experienced adjudicators who may have been there a number of years ago, but always just assume that the person visiting your village or town has never been there before and work from there. A good idea might maybe to do your map up and give it to someone who's not from the area and say, would you mind using this map and see can you find your way around? And that might be a good litmus test to see if it works. Just remember, a failure to include an adequate map could affect your marks. And by saying this, it's not that we're going to deduct you for the map, but if we can't find your project, how are we able to give you the marks? So that's a key thing to bear in mind. Again, really want to afford marks to the fantastic projects that you're doing, but if we can't find them, it's really, really hard to do that. So we're just going to go into some examples of maps. And again, all of these maps were kindly supplied by community groups and are available to look at on the Tidy Towns website. So for example, we have a fantastic and really visually engaging map on the left-hand side there from Ennistimon in County Clare. Excellent map. Outlines a lot of the key landmarks in the area and a good legend. And I just took this off Google Maps. This would be the equivalent if they had taken it off Google Maps. As you can see, very few of the street names, a lot of the businesses, but not the landmarks. So this is why we're always encouraging people not to use Google Maps, and particularly for the larger towns and the large urban centres where it becomes really, really densely populated with information that we don't need. So please try and adhere to that. Again, another fine example here from Bray Tidy Towns. So as you can see, they've broken it down based on category, they've numbered it, they've color coded it. So a lot of really, really good information there. And it's not overly populated with unnecessary information. All the streets are there, the parking facilities are there, which is great because if we're driving to your locality. So again, a really, really good example of a map. But again, that Bray is a large town, and then you can go to Kilmurray Village, and again, very small village, but a perfectly adequate map, hand drawn there. I would know if I was in that village, I would very, very easily not only find my way around, but also find all the projects that they had done. And the last one just to share there is Capamore. Again, a classic example, doesn't need to be digital, doesn't need to be professional, but the best people to draw your map or to help someone draw your map are the people from the locality. So this is very clearly outlined. The one change I would make to this is I would have included the legend on this map. So again, a beautiful map really clearly illustrates all the main features and the streets. It just would have been good to have the legend there. And again, look, maybe that was on the reverse of the page, but for me walking around Capamore, that would have been really, really useful. But well done to Capamore, and a huge thank you to all those groups who shared their maps. So look, just a really quick recap. Again, the key deadline, Monday, the 12th of May. Really start working on it. If you haven't started it now, start chipping away at it from this day onwards. Again, from personal experience, we do not underestimate the time and effort that goes into submission. So again, on behalf of all the adjudicators, thanks so much for the effort that's put into it. The entry form is available to download at tidytowns.ie. Again, that can be in a PDF format or can be in a Microsoft Word format, which allows you to edit it and remove that excess text that we referred to earlier. There's a map of your town or village. Before and after photographs, again, absolutely key here. And they don't need to take up the whole page. There's no reason why you can't include 3 to 4 projects in one A4 page. We don't need it blown up to A4 or A3. So please be strategic in terms of how you lay out your photographs and how you really, really maximize the space on each page. Make sure to include your 3 to 5 year Tidy Towns plan. I suppose for some of the towns and villages, make sure to constantly go back and just check the CSO data on your category. You might no longer be a small village or a small town. You may have upped. Now, the adjudicator will check that too, but it is important that you check which category you correctly align to. So again, we've gone digital, and this is really important in terms of sustainability. So there's, particularly for you not having to print out large volumes of information. Also then in terms of postage and the emissions that go with that. So remember, submit by email only to tidytowns@drcd.gov.ie. Again, 20 megabytes, there has to be a limit on this. And I know this can be an issue for you with the photographs. So do bear in mind, there is a function within Microsoft Word that you can click on the photograph, and then in the top left-hand corner, you can click compress picture. That will make it smaller. Also, if you save it as a PDF, that will make it smaller again. And it does keep a lot of the quality. The one thing I would say is be sure the quality is maintained though. Maybe print out a sample page or absolutely print out your map. Because unfortunately, sometimes in an effort to try and keep it at 20 megabytes, we get maps that are very, very pixelated and grainy and hard to read. So make sure to do a dry run of your map and maybe a sample page. And then there's that anxiety of, did it arrive after all the time and effort that you put into it? So look, in fairness to Niamh and the team in the department, they're great. So make sure you'll get an acknowledgement email. You can check the Tidy Towns website as well, because all of the entries will be registered there. And look, if at any stage you are concerned, just pick up the phone and give them a shout. The team will be more than happy to see if your entry has arrived. So don't worry about that. So again, there are 8 categories. Make sure you try and target as many of them as possible. Bearing in mind, of course, you're going to have more emphasis on certain categories than others, but a lot of really, really good information in the booklet and the handbook. So we're still getting new towns and villages entering the Tidy Towns competition, which is fantastic to see. So please refer to the handbook. There's loads of fantastic information there. It's been developed by the adjudicators. So definitely it's the go-to for ye. I suppose I just want to end on this note, and this is not just for myself, but from all of the adjudicators and all the team in the department. We talk about the SDGs and we really are committed to them. And I suppose one that should never be overlooked is SDG 3, which is good health and well-being. And that's your good health and well-being. You're doing all this in a voluntary capacity. We are hugely appreciative of that, as are your local communities. So, but it is important. Please don't burn out. Please don't get stressed. If there's any concerns or you're worried, reach out to friends in the community, ask for help. But this, again, it's Ireland's largest sustainability competition, and the impact you're having is so positive. But please don't ever let that be at the detriment of your own health and well-being. So look, I just want to end on that. What you see there is the department's telephone number and their email. They're always available to chat, to give advice or guidance. And like I said, if you don't see your submission on the register, just pick up the call and give them a shout. So look, I want to just end on thanks a million to all of you. Thanks for viewing this video. I hope it's been of some benefit. And on behalf of all the adjudicators, best of luck in the competition this year.
And a huge thanks to Cormac for his wonderful presentation there. And as Cormac has said, we wish you all the very best in this year's competition. And if you have any queries, please do not hesitate to give us a call on 01773 6988 or to drop us an email to tidytowns@drcd.gov.ie. And again, thanks for watching this video today. Best of luck.